So, what's really been resonating for me recently is this idea of flow and softening into life, which I went into some detail in the last video of just how beneficial it is to really soften into life and to let go of just the tension that we have towards life. It's been a theme on within my journey and creating these videos of, I talk a lot about the fear of being seen and how that really tries to keep me tense and not open to the flow of life to be seen. And so I've had to kind of sit with this, and along with many other catalysts that life is bringing me, all to realize that it's much more smooth to be in the flow of life and not just to let life drift you on and toss you about like, oh, I'm in the flow, let life just take me wherever it wants to. I'm not in control of anything. I'll just flop in the wind and wherever life takes me. I've tried that too, and that ultimately brought me to a state of feeling powerless, which is very untrue because you're connected with the source of life and you can not control life but really coordinate with life, as you learn to make yourself more coherent and flow with life by not tensing so much towards life and towards the challenges that life brings us. And so there's kind of been a formula that I try to remember in my mind as often as possible whenever these feelings arise and when this tension arises of like, if I feel a lot of resistance towards something, I try to bring this framework into my mind as often as I can. And obviously as we all are, we're just learning to embody these things and to remember as often as possible of staying conscious and aware of not getting sucked into the mind's stories of limitations and doubt and fear and self-attack and all these things. So the first thing I try to do when I notice a lot of resistance, which does happen a lot, I've noticed I have a lot of tension in my body that just accumulates over time of repressing feelings of stress and repressing feelings in general. The first thing I have to do is become aware of that I'm holding so much tension and that there's so much resistance towards a certain thing that I'm trying to move through. For instance, moving through this fear of being seen, I had to fully sit with that and be aware of it, and say to myself, be honest and humble myself of okay, there's a lot of tension here, a lot of resistance. This is triggering me. I have to admit that to myself of okay, something needs to be done here. But how do I move through it was what was keeping me stuck. And so after I become aware of this trigger, this resistance, the next thing is to soften into what is arising, to gently soften into the resistance of what is arising. If there's a lot of fear, you welcome that fear, like I've been talking about, holding loving space for yourself without getting wrapped into the story. Because I've noticed there's a balance between getting so sucked into the story of what the mind is saying and to hold space for that feeling. Again, I'll give the example of this fear of being seen that I'm, constantly working through is I have to soften into that fear. But if I totally give into that story and give my power away to that story of you can't be seen, you're not good enough to be seen, what good do you have to say, blah, 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 you should stay small out, get your face off this camera. If I bought into that story and that narrative, I'm going back a step and I'm tensing and I'm resisting life, right? But if I open to the feeling, say, okay, what is this fear trying to communicate? What is this fear trying to say? And the fear is saying all its stories and all the things I just said. And so I accept the feeling of the fear, but I don't buy into the story it's telling. This comes with practice, I'm finding out. Because I can intellectually say this and you go, okay, cool. But this really does come with a practice of every day I'm trying to look into myself and like unravel this resistance towards life, because I believe life is supposed to be flow based and you're supposed to coordinate with life, not tense and resist life the entire time and suppress these feelings. I think these feelings are trying to communicate these insecurities and fears, or whatever it is, all the false beliefs, all the limiting beliefs that keep you stuck in tense, resisting life. The feeling is just the messenger doing its job of alerting you that there's a lot of false beliefs in the system, in your energy body, in your nervous system, in your subconscious mind, that it's trying to alert you to not buy into these stories anymore if you want to move through, right? And that's what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to let this fear arise, as I've been saying over through the videos. And this applies to anyone in any catalyst or wherever there's resistance in life, to let that feeling surface without buying into the mind's stories of it. And that in itself begins to take away a lot of the ego mind's power, the resistance towards life. A lot of that just starts to dissolve on its own the more this is practiced, of softening into what is arising, softening into that fear, welcoming that feeling to arise, to melt into my awareness, my loving awareness, the light of awareness that is in me. And this can be discovered deeply within meditation, of getting still with yourself and really letting the feeling come up, and then being aware of the stories that are arising and going, well, I'm actually the one who is aware of these stories, so I don't necessarily have to believe them or buy into them anymore. And once that becomes a practice, really, like mindfulness meditation mixed with this softening into flow and letting these feelings come up without getting lost in the story, is the balancing act that depolarizes the resistance very quickly. And from that, which can take time, again, this is a practice, you begin to act more from a flow-based way of living, a more coherence. Your mind is more, it's less scattered and all over the place, and it's more centered, and you can kind of act from a more clear perspective once you learn to really sit with these feelings and to not buy into the story that it's trying to convince you with. And more so every day, for me especially, I'm realizing like these beliefs that the mind's trying to get me into buying they just keep me stuck. Like there's no real reality to them. Like they're telling, like the story is trying to get me not to post videos and the whole range of stories that that the mind tries to keep you stuck and tries to get you playing small and safe with. It's just really just this framework that I'm trying to present here and kind of summarize from my last videos of when a trigger and resistance comes up, become aware of it. You have to be almost like humble towards it, of like, okay, there is still a lot of resistance within me, and that's okay, because I soften into what is arising. Maybe there's fear coming up. I let the fear be seen. I hold space for the fear, but I don't buy into the story. I don't let that that voice, you know what that voice means when I say it, right? It's that all that negative self-talk. I don't buy into that. I accept the feeling and I don't buy into that, which completely depolarizes the mind's resistance towards life over time with a practice. And from that, I can act from a state of coherence and flow and and I coordinate with life instead of trying to fight it and battle, survive the fittest, battle against life. I can just let go of that tension and coordinate with life instead of trying to battle it nonstop, right? So that's kind of my summary of these past videos, and this is just a core framework that I will continue to build, and I'm continuing to build a whole framework and practice around it of journaling about this, going into meditation, and really reflecting each day on challenges that arise, because challenges are always going to arise in life. That's part of why we incarnate here, is what I believe. And so it's completely in our best interest, I believe, to really look at these challenges and to be honest with ourselves of, okay, let's try to move through this if it feels comfortable. Let's try to soften through this so we can move through it and evolve and become more empowered.